Alright, hey everybody. It looks like it's time for another project video. And let's jump right in. So as Roy says, let's do, I thought it was a twist top. Probably better not. So I guess you can see where this is going. Last week, for my Iron Concepts, which is probably this week's Iron Concepts, I drew this. And yeah, let's make a bottle opener. Nice and simple, a can't sleep bottle opener.
So we will start this project with a piece of 5/8 round, 2.5 inches long. It's not so important that it's this exact material, but the total amount of volume is. For instance, a piece of 3/4 round, 1 3/4 inches long would have the same mass of just over 3/4 of a cubic inch. Once the stock is cut, we touch off the corners to get rid of any burrs. These dies are our aggressive drawing dies on our shop's 110. This shoulder could be just as easily cut in with combination dies, but these drawing dies are a good step between the narrow and wide sides of the combination dies. As usual, it is best to start out by aggressively chopping down the tip of the bar nearly to dimension. This will help to prevent a bird's mouth from forming in the end. Once this is done, just shy of an inch will be chopped down to form the final bit of the taper and the opener. A further shoulder is set to give the point where the 90-degree bend will happen. The extra material at the shoulder will help to form a good corner to draw out. The silhouette is formed first, flat on one side and a reflection of the horn and the hammer on the other side, giving you a good shape that swoops out. Then the 90-degree bend and pull the corner. You don't have to pull the corner as far as you can though. It can be pulled further cold at a later time. One of the nice things about having a propane forge nearby and working such a small piece of material is that you can reheat the piece very fast, but keep the heat very low to prevent scaling. Once the shape is fully refined, the bend can be made on the forks and refined on the horn. Before forming the shoulder for the stem, we can go in and quickly flatten the handle from one side. Doing this now will help the shoulder to be nice and crisp. To practice with the material half on and half off, we can establish the shoulder for the stem. The material is pinched between the hammer and the anvil, and the material must meet solidly with both or it will rock. In this case, it could be knocked out of the tongs. This means a certain amount of power and accuracy are required to establish a shoulder like this cleanly, and this is a great technique to practice on small tight forgings to strengthen your hammer technique, because you will know when you have lost control. Even though this is a small chunk, we can start this taper very quickly on the power hammer. This also lets us focus on walking that shoulder to the top. Now all that is left is to finish refining the long stem with a nice graceful point on the end and a smooth taper. The thickness of the material at this stage gives a lot of freedom and establishes shape that will blossom later on in the forging. We can now collapse the shoulder as we spread the leaf. If this transition is smooth, it will look graceful and would be difficult to form at a later stage. Setting veins like this can be tricky enough as it is, so it's good to have a plan before you strike the first blow, because once you do, everything else must work around where you have started, and going back can be difficult to impossible. As the material cools, the hammer marks become more polished, and this could show up in the finished piece, even though we have several heats left to go. Now that the fuller marks are in, we could take advantage of the fact that the dies are directional in the nature of how they draw material, as well as that they stay parallel to one another. This lets you spread the leaf and push it in different directions while getting the same crispening effect that you would if you were to use a flatter on the anvil to refine the fuller marks. While this doesn't meet the aesthetic of free-form forging, it is still a cool look and works for the design of this piece. It's best if you don't have to further refine the silhouette of the piece at this point, but if you do, you could try using some of the extra material to push out into low spots. If you do forge from the side, be mindful of where every hammer blow lands, because they will be seen in the finished product. First, we will finish refining the taper and break off any loose scale. The first curl on the hanger is important. Once it is formed, it will be difficult to change. The second curl is more forgiving, but must be graceful while using up the right amount of material. This is where the horn on the anvil comes into play. We didn't measure the length of the stem when we were forging it, thus it must be just the right size circle, and it must be round, but we do not know what size that is. But we can discover it by working it around the horn until everything falls into place. Everything on the hanger is very graceful, but it also doesn't flow together, so ironically, we will flatten it into a block of wood to give it more three-dimensional appeal. Now, for just a few final tweaks at a low temperature to prevent further scaling. Last, for the cold adjustments, including pulling out the corner of the bottle opener. For the finish, we will use a star bit to knock off the loose scale and polish the scale that stays. Then just a bit of sandpaper to bring out the highlights. And a single coat of wax to keep it from rusting, and it's all done.
go too bad, and all things considered, we came out kind of like the drawing. The stem got a little bit long on me, and I think the actual little arm right here could have a little bit more grace to it. But I mean, all things considered, if I drew that for a customer and this is what they got, I don't think that'd be too bad off. But now for the test of truth, the moment of truth. Does it actually work? Oh yeah. Mountain Dew. Awesome. See you guys next time.
Thanks for watching, and subscribe to keep up with what is new with BLU.